Good evening. The Finance and Law Subcommittee shall come to order. I'll start with a roll call. Mrs. Shavs.
Present.
Mr. Vieira.
Present.
Chairman DeMello, present. First up, we have the use of facilities, a C attached memo. Mrs. Monahan.
As you can see, we have 3 organizations that are requesting use of our facilities. Again, this is just normal stuff that we put forth in front of you, and some fees have been waived because they do community service.
Wonderful. Just a quick question. LGI, what's that stand for?
The LGI is a classroom in Taunton High School. It's an exercise classroom.
That's the one that's kind of
Correct, yes.
when we've been in before. Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you. Okay, wishes of the committee?
Receive and place on file.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, ayes have it, thank you. Next up, we have the Pest Control Award, see attached memo. Back to you, Mrs. Monahan.
Sure. Like we do every year, we do go ahead and request quotes for our pest control within our schools. As you can see, we received 4 quotes, and that our current vendor, Flynn Pest Control, they were the lowest and most responsible bidder for the monthly cost of $710, yearly cost of $85.20. Of course, that is the lowest bid. Where you have the most expensive bid, which is Modern Pest Control, which is $19,500 a year.
So, a motion would be in order to recommend awarding the pest control service to Flynn Pest Control, as they were the overall lowest and most responsive bidder in the amount of $8,520.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Next up, we have the special education expense update. Back to you, Mrs. Monahan.
These are the last 2 charges that we will receive for FY '24. And again, $50,000 was our budget. May 2024, the bill was for $8,418. June, services were $6,367.78, where we did go ahead and have services rendered year-to-date of $37,187.44, where that balance of a little over $12,000 went back into the budget and has been spent.
I'm sorry, it has been spent?
Of course, yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So, based on this, $50,000 for FY '25 seems reasonable again?
Yes, and that's what we did do for FY '25.
Okay, great. Wishes of the committee.
Receive and place on file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Next up, we have bills payable. Let's start out with FY '24. FY '24 in the amount of $3,121,833.81. Wishes of the committee.
Motion to approve in the amount of $3,121,833.81.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
On discussion, Mrs. Shavs. Take your
I have a
time.
couple. On page 1, under Amazon Capital Services, what is that homeless other student activities?
That is charged to a grant. So that purchase that we did, or that was a credit, that is a grant that we have, and it was through the state for the homeless population.
Are they buying something through Amazon?
Yes, we buy backpacks, we'll buy,
Oh, okay.
and you'll see them right
Yeah,
behind
I
you.
saw them when I came in
Yes,
today.
yes.
Yeah, okay, so that, okay. So it's school supplies for these kids? that-
Hygiene, everything like
Okay,
that, yes, quite
anything
a
that
few.
they need? Okay, excellent. So I see it a couple of other times on page 2
Correct.
also. The other one that I had. On page 10, the Collins construction, what was the improvement of the building for the 93,000?
That is our commercial kitchen. That's
That's
you're
the
gonna
kitchen?
start seeing
Okay.
the invoices for the commercial kitchen.
Okay.
I had that same thing highlighted, Mrs. Shavs.
Don't forget, that's gonna be to the tune of about $1.1 million.
Yeah. Okay. Educational partners, it said professional development for outside provider on page 14 for 41,000.
Sorry, hold on one second. That is investigating history. They are outside PD that we are providing for our teachers. And also the second one is a summer institute for 1-8, which is the science as well.
So the 11,000 is the summer institute?
Correct.
Okay. And you said for science?
Mhm.
Page 19, the Hyde paving. What, I know we had mentioned before, but what was that paving for?
The Hyde paving is for the Martin, we did the beginnings of the multi-court, so they
Yeah.
did the surfacing for the
Okay.
multi-court.
So for Martin.
Correct.
Now, on the next page, is that a continuation of Hyde? Because we have 35,000, and then on the next page, on page 20, there's an 89,000.
Correct. So they had two different work that they had to do in phases
Okay.
that we had to
So
work
those
on
are-
that, yes.
So that's phase 2. then.
Correct. It's final grading, it's called.
Okay. This is a big one.
Yes.
There's a big warrant here, so
It sure is.
just double checking.
No problem.
I think that may be. I think that may be all that I have. Yes.
Okay,
Those are
great.
my questions.
I have just a couple of items myself. Well, page 10 was already discussed by Mrs. Shabs. A question. It appears on page 6 and page 38 regarding per diems. And there's a multitude of individual charges for meals and so forth.
Oh.
Do we have a per diem amount established when people are traveling, or is it?
We do. It's by the city ordinance, and it does have, and I don't remember the numbers right off, but yes, we do have a specific amount for each meal.
And you require receipts, or is it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, in the higher ed arena, because of course I sit there, we have a per diem based on the GSA, based on city and so forth. So you can spend up to that amount, you don't require receipts. Would we ever want to entertain that? I mean, it just seems like, there's what, one individual has like 12 receipts, another individual has 13 or 14 receipts, and the worst part is, sometimes you lose receipts, and you don't get reimbursed for them, because you can't find the receipt. I mean, I know a lot of people use credit cards, but sometimes people pay cash. And I'm just trying to make it easier on our folks when traveling on school business, right? So have we ever,
I can definitely look into that and work with the city and see if that is something that can be entertained, or if it's something with the city ordinance that we have to follow through.
yeah, all right, something.
Are you asking about us having our own policy and not following the city ordinance?
Well, I mean, whatever it is, whatever makes it easier for our traveler. I'm just getting concerned, I mean, both these travelers, one has 10 or 12, the other one has another 10 or 12 receipts. They range from $9.89 to $45.77. And these are meals, right? So they're on TPS business, they're at a conference, whatever, and, they're worrying about basically saving every little receipt to get reimbursed. If we do it by the federal GSA, where it goes by city, of course, you can't eat in New York City for, $20 for a lunch, but you could eat in Taunton for $20, so to speak, So I just think it's easier. We don't have that many travelers. I mean, it's just kind of make it smoother. And if they don't use it, they don't use it. I mean, if they can starve for the whole day, but they'll get that amount back,
I think it would make sense to maybe refer this to
Absolutely.
administration to come back with a report.
Okay, if my colleagues would like to move that motion.
Sure, motion to refer to administration.
Seconded.
And then come back with a recommendation.
The per diems and come back with a recommendation, sure. Great, thank you. So that's one observation on the warrant. The other one is on page 20, and just quickly, let's see what it is here. Okay, yeah, Jim Dorsey, replacement of equipment, $50,000. What project was this?
That's the continuation of the HVAC grant that we have amongst a few of our schools. So
Okay.
I think there's one more outstanding invoice.
Okay, great, so that's
The most recent school is Bennett?
Correct, we're working on Bennett right now.
Bennett. Okay, great, so that's all I have for that, but I would like the maker of the motion, Mr. Viera, to kindly amend to include that I will be voting present on page 29, voucher number 23099 to Pride, Inc. in the amount of $22,156, as I serve on the Board of Directors and am co-treasurer. So if the maker of the motion would kindly
So
amend.
amended.
Is there a
We need a
second?
Seconded.
second.
Great. Okay, so that's it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Now on to FY '25. The bills payable for FY '25 in the amount of $54,411.54.
Motion to approve in the amount stated, $54,411.54.
Seconded.
Okay, and just before I call the vote, I want to make sure I don't have any notes on that. I do. So on page 1, it's the insurance agency for athletic insurance bond in the amount of $9,850.
That is our yearly insurance policy that we have for our student athlete insurance.
Covers the entire academic year?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all I have. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Good, that concludes the finance and law. Motion to adjourn be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
All in
Second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned. The first regular June meeting of the Taunton School Committee shall come to order. Could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Mrs. Fagan?
Lord, as we begin this session, let us acknowledge your goodness and mercy and ask your blessings on all our deliberations. We thank you for this opportunity to be of service to our community and to the young people entrusted to our care. And Dr. DeMello asked me to read a thank you note. Dear members of the school committee and Superintendent Cabral, thank you all so much for your participation and support during a very difficult time. From the family of Estelle Borges.
Thank you, Secretary Fagan.
And roll call, Mr. Enos,
Present.
Mrs. Shabs,
Present.
Mr. Pulowski,
Present.
Mrs. Fagan's present, Ms. Santos is absent, Mr. Vieira,
Present.
and Mr. Laura. I almost
Present.
called you Dr. Laura.
I heard that.
I know, I just elevated you, and Dr. DeMello.
Present. Thank you,
And
Secretary.
Mayor O'Connell's also absent this evening.
Thank you, Secretary Fagan. Next up, we have the approval of minutes of June 18, 2024.
Move approval of minutes as stated and recorded.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next up, we have the Student Advisory Committee report. I don't believe we have a student representative
I
today.
spoke with Isaiah earlier this week, he's working this week.
Yeah,
He's working, yes, he's a hard worker, and I can understand that, so we'll move on. We have public input. We don't have any public input sign-in tonight, so here you go, Superintendent, for our records. Next up, we have the Community Impact Team Summary Presentation. I'll turn that over to Superintendent Cabral.
Thank you, Chairman DeMello. So almost a year ago, I believe it was during our convocation back in August, we initiated a very ambitious program where we instituted 5 community input teams to address concerns that were brought to our attention in May of '23 by our TEA members and also members of the public regarding concerns or needs not being met in the school department. So our ambitious proposal to address those concerns was the formation of community input teams that were chaired by facilitators who did not have an affiliation with the Taunton Public Schools and co-chaired by members of our leadership team. So rather than go through the reports, I put together a slideshow or a slide deck, and you also have the report in your packet, where I will summarize the key findings that were shared by the facilitators and the co-facilitators regarding the work that took place. With some of the CITs, the work went through December. Other CITs continued meeting throughout the fiscal '24, and I believe one of our CITs will continue meeting in fiscal '25 to continue the work as they just simply ran out of time, and because it was a large endeavor, as we'll talk about it as we go through. So in the slide deck, you do have a table of contents that provides you with a breakdown of the presentation. Our vision and our mission, which this fiscal year, we will be going through our Strategic Promise 3.0. That'll be work that we'll be starting soon, and I'll be sharing with you in the near future. And we have our Strategic Promise objectives, the 4 buckets in which all the work that takes place in the Taunton Public Schools has to touch these 4 buckets. So the first CIT was the handbook review regarding student discipline and restorative practices. The facilitator was Joe Petner, along with leadership team member Stephanie Hoy, and there were a total of 17 school department employees and stakeholders who signed up to be part of this community input team. And the objective was to standardize student conduct codes across the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school. The key recommendations were to develop clear conduct codes for all school levels, to reference relevant student discipline laws in the Massachusetts General Law, and to clarify complaint redressal of hierarchy, and also details on suspension and alternatives to a continuity of learning. So with our restorative justice practices, making sure that students, depending on the consequence, that there is some form of restorative and alternative to suspension where it's warranted. So it doesn't mean that we're no longer going to suspend students. If a student warrants a suspension, they will be suspended. But if there's an opportunity for a student to do something or give something back to the school, give back to the community and learn from it, and that is something that we will pursue or we will add to our handbooks. So because our handbooks are unique and our handbooks address different levels of students and they're developmentally and age appropriate depending on the grade level, the handbook updates will be ongoing. There will be new policies that you will see coming before the Rules Committee that will be embedded in the elementary handbooks, the middle school handbooks, and then obviously in the high school handbook before it gets approved. So this will be work that'll be ongoing throughout the course of the year and that the school committee will be involved in. So again, we will continue to revise and seek approval for updated policies. And I believe it is also time for the Taunton Public Schools to work with the MASC to look at our policy manual and make any updates or any adjustments, because I believe it's been nearly 10 years since we last updated our policy manual. So that's something Mr. Barata and Mrs. Hoy and Mrs. Moynihan that we'll be bringing to the school committee in the near future, because it is time for a very comprehensive review. The therapeutic learning programs, entrance and exit criteria. So the facilitator here was Paul Zinni, who was a former superintendent, and Amy Moynihan who makes up the leadership team, and there were 10 members who participated in this CIT. And their charge was to evaluate and enhance a therapeutic learning center program to better serve the students with social, emotional, educational disabilities. The key findings: the TLC provides a service for students with social, emotional, educational disabilities. Most students, again, most, not all, we want to get to all, that's why we had the CIT. Most students show progress and can transition to the general education setting. So what that means is we have a number of students in the TLC program at the elementary, middle school level. Some students, for whatever reason, they're not meeting their goals, they're not meeting their benchmarks, they are not able to mainstream with the general education setting in the general education classrooms. But for a large number of students, they are able to make that transition, which over a period of time should lead to students being fully mainstreamed in the general education setting. So the key recommendations was to establish additional therapeutic learning center classrooms, to implement consistent behavior management strategies, and most important is what we also discovered is that the level or the ability levels of our educational assistants and some of our teachers, there are discrepancies, and we need to make sure we're getting everybody on par by providing robust professional development. So what will be the next steps? And I tried to outline it in a way that makes sense, and most of these items can be addressed in fiscal 25. So for the 2024-2025 school year, through the 240 grant, so this is outside of the FY25 appropriation, through the 240 grant, we'll be able to hire floating assistants who will be able to provide classroom coverage should assistants be absent or should assistants be needed in other classrooms to provide additional supports for students who are dysregulated. For fiscal 25, we will also schedule weekly staff meetings. This is something that they did in the past, but for whatever reason, it wasn't being consistently done. So consistently, for fiscal 25, there will be staff meetings with the educational assistants, as well as the instructors and the administration and the leadership team members who are most appropriate to serve in that role. But one thing that was observed is using food as a reinforcement for behavior. That will no longer be allowed. It also goes against our nutrition code. And for fiscal 24-25, to ensure all classrooms implement over-planning and clear behavior management strategies. So if a student finishes their work, there'll be an assignment waiting for the student. I'm also asking for the instruction to be more hands-on for the students in these programs. To believe that we can replicate what's going on in the classroom where a student was not being successful in a therapeutic learning model, I believe kind of goes against what we're trying to accomplish or what we're trying to do in these programs. So by over-planning, making sure that there's enough work to keep the students engaged. And I want to clarify, it's not busy work, it's meaningful work, standards-based instruction aligned with the standards that the students will be and the staff will be utilizing, and also making sure that the behavior strategies are consistent from room to room. So that way when the student moves from one room to the other, they know that the expectations are going to be consistent, they're not going to differ from teacher to teacher. Again, provide ongoing professional development for staff on student management. And at the high school level, will be to establish a high school classroom. And then for fiscal 26, as we enter the budget process in October, which is not that far away, for fiscal 26, we'll begin budgeting for an additional TLC classroom at the Chamberlain Elementary School. And you'll see that as we go through the budget process. The Taunton Alternative High School reevaluation and expansion, again, that was led by Paul Zinni and leadership team member Chris Barata. That had the most participants with 24. And the objective was to strengthen and expand the credit recovery program to improve student outcomes and address the behavioral needs separately. The key findings is that the credit recovery program has a high success rate in helping students earn the necessary credits to graduate. I believe year to date, over 700 students in the 10 years that the Taunton Alternative High School has been in existence, over 700 students have earned their high school diploma thanks to this program. And I believe we'll start to see similar results with the creation of the virtual academy. And there is a need to develop a separate behavioral program to address issues distinct from the credit recovery process. And that is something that we've heard loud and clear. I think what's great about the alternative high school is that it services students with severe social and emotional needs, students who have severe anxiety concerns and being in large classrooms. So I think now we're at the point where we need to evolve and have a separate program that addresses more of the behavioral concerns, similar to the TLC program at the middle and elementary school at the Taunton Alternative High School. So key recommendations: to adjust the schedule to align with traditional school day, to explore a new curriculum called Spring Point Learning, to hire additional staff and enhance security measures, which Assistant Superintendent Moynihan has already taken steps. And something that I don't know is going to be very popular when you talk to Principal Delaney and the students during student advisory, but we'll discuss it, is a potential name change to the school. So for fiscal '25, what can be implemented this year, the schedule change. Principal Delaney can work with his staff to implement a schedule change. Principal Delaney and his staff will explore Spring Point Learning. And with regarding to hiring staff and security measures, for fiscal '25, the Director of Facilities, under Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Moynihan, will explore the existing space to identify new classroom space, new learning space. We've already secured a quote for 125 Yonder cell phone cases. They're approximately $30 a case, so that's about $4,000 to outfit every student with a Yonder case at the alternative high school. To hire 2 for fiscal '26, again, when we start the budgeting process, for fiscal '26, to budget for 2 full-time teachers in math and English language arts. And through the budget process, and potentially with conversations with the city on the net school spending side, we can budget for a security guard, and then we can also discuss having an additional full-time resource officer at the Taunton Alternative High School. Whether we absorb that through indirect costs or whether that's something we build into the budget, that's a conversation we can have during budget season. And for fiscal '27, if we expand and add that program to address the behavioral needs of the students, then we'll have to have a conversation regarding additional academic support and the potential of hiring an assistant principal. And then my recommendation, whether you want to make that motion tonight or you want to make this motion at a later date, would be to refer the possibility of a high school name change to the High School Advisory Subcommittee. I think that would be the most appropriate place to start, then have that conversation with the full committee based on the conversation with the principal, the staff, and the students. Any questions, conversation regarding this piece? I know I'm moving quickly. Continue. The social emotional learning and mental health supports. So this was facilitated by Amy Ballin, Amy Moynihan, and Stephanie Hoy from the leadership team. And that was a rather large group as well with 22 CIT members. And the objective was to integrate social emotional learning, SEL, throughout the school culture in daily routines to foster a supportive and inclusive educational environment. The key recommendations were to pilot trauma-informed approaches at select schools. So again, pilot. Let's see what works well. Let's use some evidence-based practices and see if it produces the outcomes that we desire. Introduce restorative practice program. Conduct, and I always want to preface, and I want to go back to restorative justice, restorative practice program. It doesn't mean that students are not going to be disciplined with detentions or disciplined with suspensions. But if there's an alternative route, we want to explore what are some proven restorative discipline practices that get students to buy into the school and feel like they're part of the community, part of the school. We want to conduct a needs assessment for the elementary school safety and belonging. And this committee has done an outstanding job. I cannot commend you enough. Every time we ask for additional teachers to reduce class sizes, you say yes during the budget process. So we will continue to be strategic where we notice large class sizes. We will be strategic in recommending teachers to certain buildings or certain grade levels in order to maintain that 20 to 24 student-to-teacher ratio. And right now, in our district, we are, I believe, at a 19-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio throughout the entire Taunton schools. So some key recommendations on next steps. In the spring of '24, we initiated a trauma-informed approach pilot at the Elizabeth Pohl Elementary School and the Benjamin A. Freeman Middle School. We implemented restorative practices in a needs assessment. That'll be conducted this fiscal year, '24-25. Conduct a needs assessment for elementary school safety and belonging. So conduct a needs assessment for elementary school safety and belonging, both during structured and unstructured times. Unstructured times would be lunch and recess, where we see a large number of the discipline referrals to the office during those unstructured times. Hallway passing as well, after school, before school, how kids conduct themselves, how to be a student in school during the day and during those non-structured times. And during future budget cycles, to hire additional K2 teachers so that we can reduce the class sizes at the K1-2 level. Ideally, what the recommendation was, I believe, was to get down to about 18 to 22 per class. The anti-bullying and character education program, so this was the last program. This was led by Paul Zinni and Assistant Superintendent Brenda Moynihan, and that had 10 members. And the objective was to promote a cohesive approach to fostering a positive school climate through integrated and consistent practices. The key recommendation was they found, this CIT and its members found that there was a lot of overlap with some of the previous CITs. So what they felt was to merge this CIT, the anti-bullying efforts, with the student discipline and the restorative practice CIT, because again, of the overlap. And they also suggested and recommended to ensure consistent management of behavioral issues across all grades in all schools. We've done a great job when it comes to our academics and our curriculum. When the student moves from East Taunton Elementary to Chamberlain, they're using the same curriculum. And what we're also finding is that they may be 1 or 2 lessons off from where they were when they moved from one part of the city to the other part of the city. What we need to do a better job at is making sure that we are speaking the same language, just like in curriculum and instruction. We're speaking the same language across all our schools when it comes to disciplining our students, or how we address behavioral issues. So again, integrated, updated policies, which was the handbook CIT. So the next steps will be to reflect the updates in the student handbooks, bring them to the committee for approval, and then implement a district-wide restorative justice or restorative discipline practices throughout the Taunton Public Schools. And what I can always, this is one quote that always resonates with me, because we're a small group. The leadership team is just a team of 6. This is a team of 9. And it's through the actions of a small group that some really large and impactful action can take place that really benefits the students and benefits our school community. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain any questions, preferably from my chair versus here. And we can have a conversation about any of these CITs.
Sure. Give everybody a second to get back to their seats. Thank you, Superintendent Cabral. Open it up to the committee for questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Laura.
Superintendent, could you speak a little more about the clarified complaint redressal hierarchy?
Which CIT was that?
That would be on the handbook review in the beginning, where it says clarified complaint redressal hierarchy, as far as, are we talking about
Chain of command.
chain of command? That's what I,
So typically, putting on my classroom hat, and this is going back to the 1900s, so bear with me. So most student discipline, I think Mrs. Shavs will attest, most student discipline issues start at the classroom level. Right? Has the teacher contacted the family? Has the teacher worked with the family, or has the teacher held a detention with the student? And if that's not working, then it would be next in the high school level, could be the department head, or could be the associate principal. So student discipline should start at the classroom and then progressively make its way through the office of the assistant principal, and if needed, the director of student services. And in some cases, it does make its way to my level as superintendent. So it's pretty much following the chain of command and making sure that those systems are tight throughout the school system, that parents, teachers aren't bypassing, and that everyone is doing their role when it comes to managing student behavior at the building level. I hope that answers your question.
yeah, it did. And now, secondly, as far as a community-based program, now, we're talking about outside agencies also being involved within the educational system to address issues with students, social, emotional disabilities, whatever it may be. Are we utilizing other resources in the community?
We do, but not as well as we probably could. So we have brought in consultants. For example, we brought in Playworks. Playworks came in and trained all our lunch recess assistants on how to manage and how to supervise a classroom, how to manage and supervise the recess area, how to engage the students in productive activity so that students are engaged. So that would be a community organization. I can also say that Mrs. Hoy, in her work as overseeing student affairs, she works very closely with the courts. So making sure that we're leveraging the courts when appropriate and when needed. So it is going to be a comprehensive approach. And what we do want when it comes to the educational side is using evidence-based programs, not some vendor who comes in and says, I got the next greatest thing. Is we want to make sure that we do our due diligence, that we visit schools that have utilized these programs or these practices, similar to what we did with the recess spaces. We visited a number of classrooms and saw the reset spaces work and then brought it back in a way that makes sense in Taunton, and that's what that means.
Thank you. I like the format. I really support all of the implementations and new processes that are going through. My question is your administration working with the TEA representatives to ensure that they're on board as far as, what I'm trying to say is, them coming to us saying, we don't like this, we don't like that, we don't like that. Are they aware of these so proposed changes and additions?
So what I will say is, when you look at the 17 members, and if you remember when we launched this initiative, it was during Convocation Day. So we had 900 school employees in the auditorium. So the TEA is well represented on each of the CITs. And this is a public document, and you also bring up a good point. I will share this PowerPoint and the report, I will share with all union leadership, from the TTAA to the TEA. And they'll get a copy of this report to make sure that they understand what the findings were and what the recommendations were, and that these are the initiatives or the steps we're going to be taking moving forward. So thank you for that recommendation.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Viera.
I just wanted to thank you, Superintendent, for all your hard work on this, and your team and everybody else who participated. The one thing that stuck out and resonated to me was the poor behavior, not being rewarded with Happy Meals anymore. I know it sounds silly, but it's, there was a lot of complaints in the public eye, so that would be
Right.
a huge improvement to Taunton Public Schools. Thank you.
And part of the reason why we do these audits or we do this work is, as much as I like to be everywhere in the district, and my team everywhere in the district, we can't be everywhere all the time. So when that was noticed and that was observed and that was a consistent practice, that's something that we need to put a stop to and teach our kids, what is the reality to expect in the real world when they move on from elementary to middle school to high school to university or whatever their post-secondary pursuit. You're not going to be rewarded with food.
Good. Mrs. Schaafs?
I'd like to say also that I think this was a great presentation put together. I like the fact of auditing what is going on. I like that the facilitator, the main facilitator, wasn't someone that was from the district, which I think is important, because then we get buy-in from the different unions that Mr. Laura was talking about, in that, you've got someone that doesn't have a connection, that's going to be impartial and really look at it. And then I like the buy-in of being able to allow members of the other unions to be part of it, because then you will get the buy-in. So if you've got 22 members, I mean, that's a lot of people coming together. I mean, and they're giving up their time to really look at things under a microscope. And so I thought the next steps and the key recommendations were very clear-cut and very definitive, which really showed that there was a lot of thought going on. There was a lot of really investigating what was going on in the different areas and really coming up with things that would benefit both our schools, our students, our programs, and we can only get better if we continue to do this. So I thought this was outstanding. Thank you.
And as with most documents that I create or the leadership team creates, this is a living document. So we will revisit this document probably sometime in December, November, when we're halfway through the year, and I'll provide you with an update on where we are.
Great. At this side of the room, anybody? Mr. Laura, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one more quick remark, if I could, Superintendent. The principal at the Taunton Alternative High School, he explained to me a couple of times of the amount of emphasis or work that he and his team have done to work with students who may drop going to school. And he was explaining to me a couple of times how he and his team went to the home repeatedly over and over and over and get that student to come back. And that is something that I think is positive for that environment. That there are some students, not many, but there are some students who simply drop out, give up on everything. And because of their efforts, that they repeatedly visit the student to reassure that it's okay to come back, that you are accepted once again. They might go through a tough time on a decision-making error, but it was really quite well to hear that he and his team do work extra hard to make sure that those kids feel part of the program.
And I think that's why it's very important that that objective, and if you haven't read it, just again, read it again. The therapeutic needs of the kids that you just described. Mr. Delaney and his team The integrity of that program is making sure that the therapeutic needs of the kids are being met. It's not a traditional alternative high school in the sense that students who have been incarcerated that have to be integrated into the public schools are going to Taunton Alternative High School. You know, students who, again, suffer from anxiety, students who suffer from other diagnosed medical needs, you know, they've been able to be very successful, as you've heard through advisory at the Taunton Alternative High School. But we also know that there's a need when it comes to the behavioral side. So if we are able to expand that program without impacting the integrity of the current program, that'll be a huge success for the Taunton Public Schools. It'll better support Taunton High School, and it'll better support the Taunton Alternative High School, which in reality supports our community.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that.
Thank you, Mr. Laura. I just have a couple of points to make. So referring back to the MASC, the really nice system they have online, which is drop down and all kinds of references. Yeah, I think we should tap into that a little bit more. And I think you mentioned that we hadn't done it in 10 years. Well, I've only been here 8 years. We did do it once because I remember it was a very tedious task, and Jody Almeida and Jody Fiore were 2 members. I don't remember who the third one was that took some of those changes on. So I think it's a resource that especially our new members could tap into. And even myself, I don't use it enough, you know. So maybe a reminder that, yeah, a refresher that we have that tool available because we do pay into that a few $1,000s a year, which is okay by me. The other thing I wanted to mention was to Mr. Laura's point. He's talking about the alternative high school, which the kids are in their dropout able ages, which is what, 16 years old, 16 and a half?
10th grade. So I think you have to complete the 9th grade of high school, so 15, 16, yeah.
Okay, so that also happens with our elementary students, not middle school students. They just don't want to go to school. And since we're, you know, commending Mr. Delaney and his team, we have to commend some of our community facilitators that go into the homes and really sit at the kitchen table and hear the parents, who sometimes don't speak English fluently, use a second language, and get those youngsters to come into school. For whatever reason, they don't want to come into school. So it's definitely a team effort. And, you know, when we're commending Mr. Delaney and his team for the dropouts that could potentially drop out and never come back, it also exists with our little elementary kids and middle school kids, too, that are not of dropout age. And the last thing I'd like to mention is, as Mrs. Shav says, it's great that we have folks that are not related to the district. Do we commend these folks in any way with some type of appreciation certificate or acknowledge them at a school committee meeting? Because I think that's important. Yeah. Every volunteer, every person that volunteers, whether it's 20, 19, or whatever.
So if someone wanted to make that in the form of a motion, we could issue a letter and a certificate to all the members of the community input team, including members of the school committee who I need to commend, who gave up your time in addition to all the time you placed during our meetings and your professional requirements. So if you want to entertain that as a form of motion, I'd be happy to complete that task.
I'm good with that. I would make that as a motion.
Second that.
So Mr. Laura moves the motion, Mr. Viera seconds it, all in favor?
Just one more thing if I could.
On discussion,
before I take a
Mr.
vote.
Laura.
Also, now, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
20
You know,
people,
volunteers.
22 people, 24 people.
Maybe a little meet and greet, a little at the cafeteria.
All in, you're probably 100, right around 100, because we have 5 CITs, some had 10, some had 20.
Some are duplicates though, right?
Yeah.
Some folks are
So maybe
duplicate.
50 to 75 people.
Maybe like at the end of the year, have a little.
I wasn't really going that angle, Mr. Laura. I love parties and food, but I don't think I was angling
So
that. Just
a thank you letter and a citation.
I think-
That was the motion, just to be clear what we're voting on, yeah. Okay.
yes,
State of
Mrs.
appreciation.
That's great, Mr. Laura. Appreciate it. You can foot the bill. Mrs. Schaaf.
One last thing I wanted to point out, Mr. Corral went over it pretty quickly, but I'm the math person, so my brain is going. 700 students that have earned a diploma is a big amount. I'm trying to figure out statistically what it means to our dropout rate, but it has to be pretty significant. So, I mean, I think that shows what a great job that program is doing and Principal Delaney is doing with his staff there, because that's a lot.
And since we're still on discussion, I also like the piece of the consistency about disciplines throughout the schools. We use the same formula or task that we need to do, whether it's an elementary school on the east side or west side, it's consistency. So there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Laura, seconded by Mr. Vieira. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Next up, we have superintendent's report. Back to you, Superintendent Cabral.
Thank you. So I have, I believe, 3 items that I want to share with you in my super's report. So even though we're halfway through July, summer school program has been in full swing. So I'm happy to share that the Taunton Public Schools summer program is officially underway, having started on Tuesday, July 9th, and the program will conclude on August 8th. Elementary school programs are operating at the Galligan, Friedman, Elizabeth Pohl, Mulcahy, and there are a total of 338 students enrolled across all locations. Galligan is housing students from Bennett. Chamberlain students are at Friedman, and East Taunton students are attending a program here at Pohl. Several recent graduates are working as peer tutors and junior teaching assistants at the elementary school locations. The program directors and coordinators report the peer tutors have a great rapport with the students and have been very impactful as mentors to the young students in their care. Teachers have spent time working on physical education, participating in a student Olympic Games, and the program is also focusing on social and emotional learning. School counselors and social workers are using CELUS data to find building-wide trends and structure lessons and teaching appropriately. Students are also participating in outer space, which makes me excited, in science experiments across various locations. At the middle school level, the middle school programs are currently housed at Friedman and Parker Middle School, and there are 126 students participating in the program. At Friedman Middle School, students are working on English language arts and focusing on reading comprehension, plot structure, and character analysis. In math, students are learning fractions, ratios, geometry, and expressions of equations. Parker, from Martin and Parker, students are taking 6 different classes: culinary, STEM, physical education, book club, investigation convention, and Greek mythology. Programming at the high school continues to help approximately 140 students in credit recovery so they remain on pace for graduation. Students are working in 4 core discipline areas: math, science, ELA, social studies, as well as wellness. The special education programs are all running out of the Mulcahy Elementary School for students in K-3, with 64 students there, and at Taunton High School for grades 4 through 12, there are 73 students. At both locations, students are actively engaged in maintaining their current skill levels, structure, and routine. Each week will focus on a different theme, such as wonders of the ocean or the excitement of a safari adventure. Students enjoy thematic crafts or to enhance learning and motor development and have some structured academic time to reinforce their skills. I'm also happy to report to the committee and and share with the public that the new student enrollment is open online or in person, so parents have that, caregivers have that flexibility. Enrollment for new students is open both online and in person at the Family Welcome Center. Registration began on July 2nd. The Family Welcome Center is open on Tuesdays and Thursdays for registration. Grades K-7 registration is available from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and grades 8 to 12 registration is from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. The bilingual community facilitators are available at the Family Welcome Center to assist families with the registration process as well. And the online registration portal is also open and processing full registrations. And I also believe in August, Manat Health will open their offices again. So families that are registering and in need of healthcare, immunizations, or physicals, they'll be able to access Manat Healthcare as well. And then also very excited about this because I believe every building except for maybe the Leddy Elementary School, the MSBA has played a role in either constructing or renovating. So one of our very own, East Taunton Elementary student, wins the Massachusetts School Building Authority poster contest, My Ideal School. So I'm pleased to report that East Taunton Elementary School student Alana Longren is the grand prize winner of the Massachusetts School Building Authority My Ideal School Art Competition. The main objective of the My Ideal School contest is to encourage students and teachers to discuss how a well-designed and constructed school in Massachusetts can enhance student engagement and support 21st century learning. The contest was open to all first grade students currently enrolled in a Massachusetts public school. Alana's depiction of her ideal school will be on the cover of the Massachusetts School Building Authority's annual report. I'll make sure each member gets a copy of that report. For the competition, students were asked to design and then draw or paint their ideal school and then write a short essay about their design. Alana's ideal East Taunton Elementary School is a bright rainbow-colored building with areas for art, gym, cheer, football, drama, a library, and especially gymnastics, which is one of her one of her personal favorites. Alana was joined at a special ceremony at the State House by her teacher, her favorite teacher, Nicholas Boyle. Nicholas is also serving as a coordinator here for the summer school program at Pole, who she appointed principal of her ideal school. Her design was one of thousands submitted to the contest. The MSBA Board of Directors narrowed the selection down to 600 students, with State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg personally picking 10 regional finalists, including the grand prize winner. So congratulations to Alana and her family. I'm very proud to see that Taunton Public Schools and our students are being recognized on a state level. And with that, that concludes my report.
Very cool. That's quite an accomplishment for one of our students, huh? It's really nice. We should bring her in and recognize her also, Superintendent.
At our first school committee recognition, she will be there.
You got it. Wishes of the committee, questions?
Motion to
concerns?
accept the report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Superintendent. Next up, we have administrative business. I don't see anything in here. Do we have anything no? So, no action taken on administrative
Oh, I
business.
believe there's a memo that's in the packet that should be discussed at this point regarding the curriculum revision for 24-25.
Okay, we'll put that.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on the new business. My apologies.
That's
It's
the
on
new
there.
business.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're just going to, no action taken on administrative business. Next up, we have subcommittee reports. First up, we have Joint Labor Management, Unit A Subcommittee, Chairman Fagan.
Okay, notice by the date that we had this meeting on June the 5th, we inadvertently looked it over, so I'm reporting on it now. So the TEA Subcommittee met with the Joint Labor Management of Unit A, listened to the concerns, and, it was myself, Dr. DeMello, and Mr. Vieira. We listened to the concerns that were voiced by the TEA, and we referred them to the administration. They also informed us they had done a survey, which they had sent out to us so that we could look over the results of the survey. They did too. And that's our report.
Thank you, Chairman Fagan. Wishes of the committee?
Motion to receive the report and place it on file.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next up, we have Finance and Law, and that's me, Chairman DeMello. Earlier this evening, we met with Secretary Fagan, Mrs. Shavs and Mr. Vieira as part of the subcommittee, including myself. We reviewed the following items. First up, we awarded a bid. My agenda's not here. Okay, I'm sorry. First up, we talked about use of facilities. A memo was attached by Assistant Superintendent Monahan concerning some events that are taking place in the future. The wishes of the committee were to receive and place on file unanimously. Next up, we have a pest control award that bids that came in, we awarded. Of the 4 vendors, the overall lowest and most responsive bidder was Flynn Pest Control for a monthly cost of $710 at a yearly of $85.20, and it ranged from $710 a month to all the way up to $1,625 a month for a yearly cost of $19.05. So Flynn, who I believe has always been doing business with us, was awarded the bid unanimously for the amount of yearly $8,520. Next up, we had special education expenses, and a summary was provided to conclude FY24. We budgeted $50,000. We expensed $37,187.44. The remaining balance, which was used up in another line item of $12,812.56, was just rolled over to another item. And the question was posed as far as going forward, if 50,000 should remain the same target, and was said very comfortable in continuing with $50,000 for the legal expenses for special ed. That was voted unanimously to receive and place on file. And last but not least, we had 2 warrants, FY24 in the amount of $3,121,833.81. A few questions were asked, one specifically that was referred via motion, I believe, or just to administration, the per diem stuff. There was a couple of colleagues that would take business trips on behalf of Taunton Public Schools, and my concern was they're putting together a bunch of receipts, some 10, 12 receipts, sometimes it could be lost, and they're reimbursed based on those receipts. and we proposed to refer to administration to set up a per diem, if possible, by Mass General Law guidelines, whatever it may pertain to, based on the GSA rates. That's meaning which city they're going to would influence the amount they're allowed to spend up to. So that was referred to administration. A couple other questions regarding use of funds, which were answers were provided. And the last but not least, I voted present on item on page 29 to Pride Inc., which I serve on the board of directors and am co-treasurer. And just for the folks at home, that was an amount to Pride Inc. of $22,156. Once again, the FY24 budget was voted unanimously to approve and place on file. And last but not least, we had bills payable for FY25 in the amount of $54,411.54. And if I just flip to that quickly, just to make sure. A question was asked regarding a liability insurance risk policy that covers the athletics for the entire academic year, $9,850, which I think is a great deal. And once again, the FY25 was voted unanimously to approve and place on file. And that concludes the Finance and Law Subcommittee report. Wishes of the committee?
Motion to accept the report and adopt the recommendations of the Finance and Law Subcommittee.
Second on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Next up, we have new business, curriculum revision cycle 24-25, visual arts and wellness. Superintendent?
This is just to make the committee aware that for fiscal '25, we will be undergoing 2 curriculum revision cycles for visual arts and for wellness. As the memo indicates from Mr. Barata, that the curriculum subcommittee, which is chaired by Mrs. Santos, along with committee member Mrs. Fagan and Mrs. Shavs, they have been tentatively notified of the revision, so they'll be serving on these committees. So this is just to make the committee aware that we will be, again, revising these 2 curriculums, and that future dates and future meeting times will be shared with Mr. Barata. And there will be a small working group that will consist of school committee members. I would assume there'll be some students involved, some parents, some other stakeholders, and some staff as we go through the curriculum revision process for those 2 disciplines.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Cabral.
Question.
Wishes of the committee? Yes, Mr. Viera.
Has anything of performing arts having that as new curriculum, or has that discussion been had?
No, but I'll have Mr. Barata prepare an update on where we are with performing arts.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Move
Superintendent.
acceptance of the report and that it be placed on file.
Second.
On discussion, Mrs. Shavs.
Can we get an update of the actual curriculum revision cycle as to what different curriculum come up in particular years, so we know what's coming up?
I'm sorry.
The motion's already in process.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shavs. Amend the motion? Part of the motion.
Maker, will you accept that?
Yeah.
And I will also.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Under new business, during the next school committee meeting, I will meet with the superintendent and Secretary Fagan prior to possibly set forth a use of facilities review to maybe refer to rules. So we're not taking any action tonight. It's not on the agenda. Just to make everybody aware that the superintendent, myself, and Secretary Fagan will meet on that for the August 7th meeting. Superintendent, thank you. So if you just give us just 1 second, Secretary Fagan?
Well, this is just an older one. We have a medical leave of absence already gone by the board, but it's a man and it put her position instead of his. Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's minor clerical
Yeah.
modification. We refer to the June 18th meeting. So that's great. So next up, we have unfinished business, action item updates. First up, we have the legal RFP update. Superintendent Cabral?
So in your packet, you have a memo from Mrs. Moynihan that she provided me regarding where we are with the RFP. So as requested by the school committee, through the form of a motion, Mrs. Moynihan created or developed an RFP. The RFP was put out and shared with several legal firms. We expect the RFPs to be back sometime early August, and I believe I believe that we discussed having the rules subcommittee review the RFPs as well as the finance and law, review the rules, review the RFPs, and then my leadership team will review the RFPs, and then we'll come together. And based on our thorough reviews and our due diligence, we can narrow it down to one or two firms, or we can narrow it down to one firm, and then have the in-person interview or interviews, and then move forward with the firm that will oversee all our labor management and also represent the school committee. Is there anything else that I forgot or that we should add, Mrs. Moynihan, that I may have missed in the memo that's of importance?
I would so move that as a form of it.
This is just for information. This
You
was
don't wanna-
something, this was something you already authorized us to do, and I just wanted you to know that we did move forward with it and that it has been published and it has been shared with several legal firms.
So will the actual interviews be public with the law firm?
When we've interviewed for RFPs, they haven't been public. They've been done in subcommittee. But that's always something that the school committee, if they chose to do, they
I
could.
mean, I would kind of recommend that because we would, in this case, not have a open meeting law violation if we met, if more than 3 of us meet on a subcommittee, right? I mean, if we have 6 meetings, we'd post a meeting.
The subcommittee would
Right, but
handle that.
the 8 folks couldn't take action. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Because the subcommittee is a subcommittee. So if we come down to 1 or 2 candidates towards the end, should it be a public interview?
Would you like me to get some legal advice?
Get legal advice to recommend.
I can, let me get some recommendations on how.
I think it's unique. I think it's some folks we're going to rely on.
You're talking about the finalists, correct?
Right, the finalists, yeah, or finalists, a
Right.
public interview, which means that not only us as committee members, but the actual public could ask some questions
And
too.
just to know too, I mean, the public, the in-person interview, that's an option for the school committee. It's not required. But so you could go through the RFP process and identify someone or identify a firm that you feel, that the committee feels is head and shoulders above the other firms, and appoint the RFP to that person, if you so choose. Or you could find 1 or 2 firms or one firm that you feel real strongly about, and then schedule the in-person interviews. That's an option that was written to the RFP. So
The reason I brought that up, because sometimes we're dealing with law firms that have 400, lawyers on staff, right? And, you don't know who you're dealing with. And I think it's important. We've had the pleasure of having Attorney David Gay with us for so long, and I mean, we know him on a personal level and on a professional level, and we can rely on him, right? We're not going through a secretary, a assistant, or whatever. We go right to the attorney. So that's my concern. I just don't want to go with a law firm that's 300, 400 lawyers deep, and before we get some action, I'm not a specialist in that, someone else is, Mr. Vieira.
Yeah, I think the dialogue's great. I think we should wait till we get back and kind of take the situation as it presents itself rather than.
Sure. Okay, we can approach this one as soon as we know if we,
That would be my thought.
okay, sounds good. So that's the legal RFP update. Number 2, action item update, and what can we get off of here? Anything?
Not yet, but what I can say, I think in my weekly memo that I provide the committee, can't find my action item. We're gonna see a lot of items coming off fast and furious. So the outdoor dining area and the food truck, that'll be coming off soon. As I shared in my weekly memo, the food truck is currently being wrapped. So it's been constructed, so that should be coming off soon. The Taunton High School awning, I'll share some photos with you. They've already done at least 1 or 2 coats, and they're starting to power wash the limestone windowsills. So that should be coming off soon. And I believe the rest can stay on.
Great. Alrighty, so that's just for informational purposes. Press time, I don't see any press in the audience. Before we adjourn, I just want to wish our colleague, Mr. Pawlowski, a happy birthday. 1 day belated, but it's still your birthday week. Happy birthday. And for the good of the order, nothing else, motion to adjourn be in order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned. Good night.